All right, I think we are good to start. Very good afternoon or good morning, depends on where in the world are you joining us from. I see there's a couple of people from Australia on the list, so good evening probably already. My name is Pavel. I'm a CMO and co-founder of Meiro. I'm joining you today from Prague, from Czech Republic. And we're going to have a really exciting event. With Meiro, with our customer data platform, retail is one of our big focuses, and we work with brands virtually across all of the regions. And so it's really interesting to chat with the industry experts. And I particularly really like to put panels together that are interesting composition. So today we are going to have on the panel Chye, who is a senior strategic business consulting from Braze, who's a omnichannel. I think Chye, you need to do the pitch for yourself later. But Braze is a marketing automation, omnichannel customer journey management and engagement tool, which we obviously brush shoulders with in the market a lot, as with what we do with customer data. We have Adrian Burton from Valiram, who is joining us as a senior vice president of marketing, so a practitioner, I think, from Malaysia, right, Adrian? Joining in from Malaysia, yes. And we have a Jayesh who is joining us from Singapore, I believe, or Jakarta, is it? Singapore, right? Oh, sorry, you were muted still. Who is joining us as a MD founder of Spectra Global, so more from a consultancy angle. So you see that we've got a really interesting mix of kind of a vendor practitioner from a sort of CMO side and consultant who sees stuff across businesses. So it's going to be really interesting. But we're going to kick off today with my colleague Quinn, who is our director of consulting and client services. And obviously, she's the one who works with our retail clients day in, day out. So she's prepared a couple of a trend overview, which we are then going to jump into a discussion on. So Quinn, before we hand it over to you, I think my colleague Adrian is going to slide a poll into a Q&A. If you guys can jump on it, so you help us understand who is on the call, who we're talking to today, and yeah, that's it. If you just click on it, and then it's gonna go away. So I'll give you a minute to do that. Before we start, we'll split the discussion in two parts. So we really want your questions to take on board. So I've got a couple prepared that I am really itching to ask. So that will take about the first 20 minutes of the discussion after Quinn's presentation, which is not going to be too long, but I think it's going to be quite interesting. And it would be great if you have any questions during the talk, whether you want to follow up a topic, please slide them into Q&A. I'll let people vote on them, and we'll pick them up in the third part of the session today. Everything is being recorded. We're going to publish a little article as a summary from it. So even if you need to jump off in the middle, don't worry. We'll send the recording. It will be somewhere on the internet and YouTube probably. So, right, okay, this is coming in. That's nice. Quinn, I'll let you then take over and do your part with the presentation. So, what do you have to share?
Thank you, Pavel, and thank you.
Quinn, sorry, something happened to your audio. We just heard the hello and thank you, but don't hear you since then.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, that's it. Perfect.
Okay, we're off to a great start. Okay, so once again, hi everyone. This is Quinn here. I'm with Meiro for about 4 years now, and I'm responsible for delivering the implementation and CDP implementation projects for our clients in various industries. So what we see a lot is basically integration of the different parts of the MarTech, EdTech ecosystem to deliver a single customer view. And this is done across different industries, including retail, including omni-channel. So that's why I'm here today, just to share with you a few trends, a few things that we are seeing from doing these to our clients, and that forms our understanding of these strategies around retail and e-commerce especially in 2021, right? So we are obviously in unprecedented times. We all know that, you know, in this time, retail is really a very different game altogether. The pandemic, if anything, it has not, in my opinion, changed so much as to accelerate the trends that have been many years in the making. So that trend being the movement from offline to online. So we all know that, right? During the pandemic itself, a lot of people are discovering doing things online for the first time. And that includes purchasing, buying, searching for things. And what's important to understand is that this is going to stay. It's not going away. So whether and when we become we go back to normal, when retail stores are opening back up, from a lot of different polls and research that we have seen, people are saying that, you know what, I'm going to continue to do this because I've discovered, you know, online and digital ways of doing things which are a lot more convenient. So at least half of the people involved in these polls are saying that, you know, this digital transformation in their personal experience is going to stay. So what this means for retailers, for brands, is that your investment in your digital assets, being a website or an improved experience on the mobile app or a loyalty program, these are investments that have a long-term impact and their payoff will last beyond the pandemic. So it's not just to tie us over during this peak of time when people are moving digitally. Right? So that's really the first thing to remember, not about moving offline to online, but it's about people staying online and us needing to manage and marry the experience of offline and online rather. So that brings us to the next point, which is that one quick and powerful way for brands, especially in the early days of the pandemic, when everything is closed and people are suddenly finding themselves having to look for whatever they need normally online, is that a lot of brands move to these platforms and marketplaces. These are just a few examples of the top platforms, top marketplaces in APAC and Southeast Asia. But of course, in each of the countries, I've seen a good mix of the local and regional brands that are where people are shopping. So this is a powerful ways to get discovered online and to pivot really quickly to bring your product to be digitally available to your consumers. So obviously for the bigger and recognized brands that already has a brand name, they can be easily found. But we find that even for niche brands and smaller shops, it is also a really powerful way to get discovered, because of really good categorization and search features on these platforms. In fact, we have, this is coming from the COO of Bukalapak, one of the leading marketplace in Indonesia, who is saying that 8 million warungs. So for those who are not familiar, warungs are like the smaller family-owned shops in Indonesia. So up to 8 million of these smaller shops, once they find themselves on the Bukalapak platform, are seeing on an average 3 times the increase in sales and earning. So it's powerful, right? And this benefits directly the smaller shops, not just the big brands as well. So one limitations that we really need to also highlight if a brand were to look at a digital platform only strategy is that on this platform, the consumer experience are very standardized. So there is no point of differentiation at all. So essentially, if how a consumer finds your brand and make a purchase and maybe leave a review is exactly the same as the next brand, right? Which is just a click away. So then there is very little points of differentiation. And then it really boils down to price competition, which is essentially a race to the bottom. That's not what we want. So The second kind of important point here is what we see from a couple of our clients who are very prominent in one of these marketplaces, is that there is very limited data sharing, for privacy, for obviously conflict of interest. But the best that you can get when you put your product, your services on this platform is information around overview of purchases, right? So without having a little bit more insight into how your consumers behave around, searching and doing the research and comparing your brand and your product with others, there's very little insight that allows a brand to optimize around their activities and products. So that's to say that digital marketplace or e-commerce platforms are crucial, but they need to be complemented with a brand's own assets. So that brings us to the next point, which is D2C, direct to consumer, which I'm sure you have heard a lot of by now. And the poster child for that is Nike, right? So Nike in, I believe, 2018 or 2019, basically left Amazon after 2 years of a trial run to be on their platform, and for the exact reason that I mentioned earlier, right? So they have left Amazon in the US to focus their strategy and their investment on their D2C strategy. And now, just 2 years out from that, the revenue from D2C is actually at this moment already about 1/3 of total revenue for Nike. And this is across their thousands of retail stores and wholesale partners distribution network. So that goes to show the success of a brand when they are doing D2C right. So D2C is really about owning the consumer relationship by creating and owning the experience on the website, on the mobile app, and creating any other experience that revolve around your product. So there is association with that product beyond, just buying something on the platform and getting it delivered to you, right? It's also about, very importantly, creating a platform that you can collect the first party data of your consumers, that your consumers provide to you with consent, that you can use for activation purpose. That's super important, especially in the current climate where third-party cookies are really on the way out, right? So even for the smaller brands, I think they can really benefit as well from this trend, having, using with the use of social media that allows you to reach out to a broader audience, and especially in, the pandemic situation where there's the trend of shop local, right? So first party data are super important, as we said. Within the Asia context, we see many examples of good D2C experiences. For example, Uniqlo with an app that really complements your experience of going in the retail store, that offers for additional benefits like your loyalty card. You can do click and collect. So, order in the app and then collect on the store, or offering as well extra colors and sizes. So that's a good example of seeing the D2C or online experience as a complementary channel to your offline experience as well. With that brings us to the last trend that we see for many vendors is the trend of really looking at vendor marketing as a meaningful extension of the marketing efforts by brands. So vendor marketing in 2021, what we have seen as a success of a couple of clients that we have, is really an extension of the traditional model where a brand may be paying for premium placement, shelf space, at the physical retail of the supermarket, for example. And the omnichannel equivalent of that is working directly with an e-commerce vendor to actually utilize and leverage on their own complete data set that includes behavioral and transactional data, right? So that gives us a very complete insight of the consumer information, and that gives us an ability to run the first party data and own assets campaign. So what that means is that brands can really leverage on these channels to be able to do a lot more effective marketing by targeting people who shows interest in their own brand that is outside of their own assets and channels, but also in those vendors' digital assets and channel as well. So that's really powerful. Right. So with all of these different trends that we are seeing, that is really powerful that brands are leveraging on in 2021. These are all made possible only by connected all your first party data together with supplementary touch points from different platforms and systems. So what that looks like is using data and using consumers' behavioral or events to really string together a consumer's journey, right, to understand the customer moments from the time that they get exposure to marketing and advertising to the decision point and to the action and to the purchase. So I would go out to say that without really connecting these touch points into a single customer view, it is virtually impossible now to do very meaningful activation, because we are living in an omnichannel world. People don't express their intention and research at the same channel where they are making a purchase, and it's not in the same channel where they are telling their friends about it. So without really understanding this omnichannel omnichannel activity and behavior of our consumers, it's almost impossible to really have a very meaningful customer experience and activation of your customers, right? So with that, what is also very important is closing the loop. So how do we know that we are doing omnichannel right? Is by moving away from measuring channels like ROI of a certain EDM campaign, or click rate of a specific ad campaign, moving away from that and moving into understanding individual consumers at individual level. Do they respond to, if they are in 5 different audiences and being served 5 different campaigns, right? Which one in which channel do they respond to? And what does that tell us about their affinity to these channels? So that's super important as well. So with that being said, the final thing that is really important to highlight here is it's all about first party data. And that means a higher requirement for brands to pay attention to data security and privacy, right? Building trust with really good disclosure and consent management, so that it's always about the value exchange to your consumers, giving you the relevant information only and at the right level of frequency in exchange for you to continue to share with us and trust us with your personal data. So with that being said, I would just leave you with this summary of these 4 trends that we are seeing online and offline, not offline to online, right? Leveraging on marketplaces as a powerful place to access the market, but at the same time supplemented with really strong D2C strategy, and finally leveraging as well on vendor marketing. We do put together an article on click and mortar, which is exactly about this topic. We will share with you as well in a follow-up, in the slide and in the follow-up emails if you're interested. So with that, I hope that's a quick overview of the trends, and I will hand over to Pavel to kick off the discussion.
Thank you, Quinn. Super informative. I think there is quite a lot to unpack in the discussion now. So let's get right into that. Chye, if I may have you start with, and then if you can just a couple minutes on introducing yourself, we'll go around the room and then we just kick off.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. I'm Chye, part of Industry Solutions in Braze. What does Braze do? Braze, we are a customer engagement technology platform, really focused on powering relevant and personalized customer experiences. And all these, we think we need to do it in real time. And what do I do within Braze? I look at data, both our own research data, to develop solutions that can help overcome challenges and also focus on delivering business growth for our clients.
Thank you. Jayesh, if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jayesh. I'm the founder of a company called Spectra Global. What does Spectra do? We help companies accelerate their data and tech investments, especially around marketing and data monetization. So I've been involved in a few customer data platform implementations, which are harnessing first-party data and other sources of data to create personalized experiences. And before that, I used to be in a MarTech and AdTech company before in Asia Pacific. So excited to be here and hoping to share some insights.
Thank you, Jayesh. And Adrian, last but not least.
Yeah, thanks. Hey guys, my name's Adrian Burton, a Senior Vice President of Marketing at Valiram Group. People that aren't familiar with Valiram Group, we are the exclusive distributors for brands such as Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, Michael Kors, Toomey, just to name a couple, Steve Madden, Tory Burch, within Southeast Asia, as well as Australia, covering markets Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, with the VS Victoria's Secret presence in Macau and also the Philippines. Been in marketing for my whole career, and recently came out of agency back to brand side. And what a time to be alive in retail. It's a very interesting time, especially in Malaysia. So happy to be here, happy to share my thoughts, and yeah, look forward to contributing.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And let's get right into it. So, Adrian, let me actually start with you right away. One of the things Quinn mentioned in her overview of the trends was the fact that, and I mean, this is obvious, like everyone who has eyes or ears has seen this, that everything shifted from inside of the malls, from virtually the offline, from the brick to the click, right? So how has that been for a retailer such as you, who guys, you have, I think, historically have relied a lot on the traditional retail, right? So how was the last year for you guys?
Yeah, I think one word to put it was challenging. I think so, especially with a business like ours, where it's still a very traditional business, not from a company perspective, but also from a consumer perspective as well. As I said, we operate in Southeast Asia, and predominantly they still want to go and visit malls, and they still want to go for the air conditioning. They still want to go and eat and shop. So I think that's the ethos and the philosophy behind that is get the brands that people desire, find the best locations, and literally open the doors. So I think that those trends obviously got bucked with COVID. But what we're seeing is we're not seeing obviously the numbers that we do see in bricks and mortar, and I don't think we will for a while to come. E-com's great, but it's not the silver bullet. And I think that's something that we can probably get all swept up in. I absolutely categorically agree with the O2O strategy. There needs to be equal weightage, in terms of the offline to online. Some of the trends that we have seen, though, in void of setting up an e-commerce business, because it's just, for someone like ourselves, you've generally got licensing. So, do you have a license to, run an e-com business in that particular market? Warehousing, are you equipped for warehousing? Are you equipped for pick and pack? Are you equipped for logistics? Do you have the team to support it from a direct-to-consumer perspective? Are you ready for payment gateways? Do you have all your payment gateways enabled? So when the pandemic hits, you just can't switch on the business. And I think Quinn's presentation was, well, okay, do we go to marketplaces? Well, then you're constrained to the wall gardens of the marketplace, right? So, and then you're in there with everyone else. So it's not an easy solution, but what we've actually found is, in void of us, I guess setting up e-com sites, which we have and continue to do, we've looked at more so innovating for what we got. And one of the things that we've sort of gone to is chat and shop. And so that's just through conversational commerce, if you want to use that buzzword. So it's utilizing the retail associates that we have, that we've got in store. It's utilizing technology, mobile phones. It's utilizing also too, catalogs. and also to communication apps, WhatsApp, Telegram, and all that as well. So, and it's looking at your CRM base, or it's looking at your customer base, and it's communicating on that realm. And you're able to do everything that you can do, I guess, via e-com, also on chat and shop. So retailers have had to be innovative in that sense. And as I said, today, right now, our Victoria's Secrets business in Malaysia is completely closed, but we've just broke sale on chat and shop. And where our Bath and Body Works business is also in Malaysia completely closed, we broke sale on e-com. Now, obviously, our e-com results are a lot more heftier than our chat and shop, but that's allowed us to, still continue to be retailers in a very challenging environment.
Perfect. Maybe a follow-up question, something I'm pretty interested in. When you do this transition from that kind of, 18 months ago, completely offline now to this hybrid mode, do you find yourself facing a different set of competitors than you would in the traditional sense and in the old days of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, the competitors are probably more indirect competitors than they are direct competitors. Because I think, especially with e-com, and we'll probably talk about, omni-channel as we go along, but when you're talking about e-com, you don't really have the focus of the consumer, you know what I mean? And that's something that's a lot different to where you go in-store. You go in-store generally with a purpose, or you go in-store to browse, right? And so, but generally you're in that shopping mindset, or you're in that purchasing consideration mindset. What you find there when you go to e-com is it could be passive. So that's where we will talk about omni-channel. That's where, funnel marketing. Wow.
Sorry, coming up. Quinn, could you? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so that's when you talk about full funnel marketing and the I guess the more elongated decision-making process to purchase. So, there are twos and fros to it. But yeah, absolutely. And I'd probably say more competition indirectly than directly.
Perfect. Thank you. This is so interesting. I think we could just spend another hour just on that, but there's so much to unpack here. So Jayesh, my next question is for you, and guys, feel free to jump in over one another with comments if you want to, at any time, please. Jayesh, one of the things that also Quinn mentioned is the D2C trend, right? And I honestly, this is something I scratch my head around, and I find this is super difficult for the more traditional companies. It's like you've been manufacturer for 30, 40, 100 years, and suddenly you are finding yourself in the new line of business of having to deliver the product because that's what the current trends dictate and ask for. And I'm curious what's the experience there from a consultant perspective, because if I kind of put my B2B CMO hat off and I look at me being a consumer, one of my kind of favorite examples in this space is that I get, for some reason, I don't drink soda, but I get constantly targeted by Pepsi.com. And it's beyond my comprehension why I should go to specific e-commerce platform, Pepsi.com, to buy a can or pack of sodas. And I just don't see why I would do that. Like they don't set up their own branded stores in the city. So why should they have an e-com? So what's your take on this? Super interesting topic.
Yeah, so I think overall, if you want to go direct to consumer in this age, you need some kind of a digital outlet, right? Whether it's a app or a site. I think most companies struggle with that because they have not done it before. But that is the only starting point, right? Because if you don't start there and learn the ropes, you will never learn it. And, it's a cascading problem, right? So I would say, and the only advice I give to companies is that it will be imperfect, right? Your traditional model is you're perfected the art and science of selling there. But here it is an imperfect art. You will fail, but the idea is to fail fast, because if you don't fail fast, you're not going to learn fast enough. So I would say set up a team, whatever it is, 5 to 10 member, start somewhere, start to, get runs on the board, right? Even if it is like Adrian was saying, first sale, whatever it is, right? Have a MVP type target, get there. And then as you go along, I think the key thing is to see what is your strong anchor, right? So especially in this new consumer age, everybody wants a stronger enough reason to buy a product. It is a link to their values. It is linked to the sense of community they have. So I think thinking through that proposition is important. Or you think of some experiential proposition, right? So which is somewhere in between. Like I've seen companies trying to do like try before you buy type of options, where it is somewhere in closer to their retail model, but you can do multiple things. Either you try and then buy online, or so it could be different experiential anchors for different companies. And then I know that Lazada, Shoppees of the world are becoming the new walled gardens, but I feel experimenting again with retail media, because the tools that today are Tokopedia and these guys offer for you to connect with the consumers is quite has advanced a lot, and it is very, very effective, right? So you do have a ready traffic of 20-30 million plus users coming daily to search for products. So how can you there's no way to ignore it, right? And so the best way is to harness it through the tools that they have. And then once you have this plus that, try to then stitch together your own data journey, right? About the user, about what he's liking, link it back with transactional data and try to form some patterns, right? So unless, and this is really the journey that I'm not saying something very different from what people have actually implemented, but in digital, implementation is the only strategy, unfortunately, and you learn along the way. And so long as you have enough experimentation points, whether it's your own first party website or app, or what data you get from some of these multi-channels. And then in this process of discovery, I've also seen many D2C get to niche marketplaces. Like, for example, the need of a L'Oreal would be very different from a mass market brand like Unilever. So if you have a beauty brand, you would find your own niche marketplaces, your own influencer portals. And I think that is where the discovery part of this whole digital journey sinks in, right? So I would say this is the journey. No perfect science, but the work is actually in implementing and seeing what is working and how to stitch this all together.
Interesting. Chye, I'm curious to hear what you're thinking about the kind of how the omnichannel. I think the omnichannel really come to kind of its own fulfillment, right? We've been calling it omnichannel, but it's really been multiple digital channels at the same time. But suddenly, it's really this whole offline to online that's kind of closing the loop. So, what do you see? How has been the business for change for Braze and your clients that you work with?
I think the point about omnichannel, I think Jayesh mentioned it, Adrian mentioned it. It's really more than just presence. It's about synchronization, because I think we go back, I think we talk about technology, we talk about digital, but fundamentally we are trying to sell things and they are selling it to humans. So I think the foundation of omnichannel shouldn't change. We have to put customers at the forefront. It's about humans at the forefront. And when you think about, if you look at it from a channel perspective, you tend to think, oh, there are many different touch points, and then you might want to do this first and then that first. But customers actually don't see it that way. The customers are not going to see the structures that you have internally as a business. They don't say that, oh, this is an in-app message that I'm seeing. It comes from the product team. I receive an email that comes from the marketing team. I think we need to remember when we talk about the foundation or the kind of secret success for omnichannel is really about communicating as if it's one person talking to your customers. And I think what we've seen across the clients that we work with, we also did a study, customer engagement report earlier this year, where we interviewed more than 1,000 senior marketing folks. And what distinguished the Ace brands, those who do really well, they're more sophisticated in their customer engagement efforts. It's actually the point that Jayesh mentioned, the culture of experimentation. A lot of them actually, those who do continuous collaborations are more likely to succeed. And I think more than 60% of them actually experiment on a continuous basis. So going back to what omnichannel is, what we are seeing is really about keeping customers at the forefront and be able to kind of apply what makes sense on a very basic level.
Interesting. I'm curious. Has the in the omnichannel engagement space, has the the measurement of success changed for clients? I'm more interested in kind of the fundamental changes of the business in retail. Does this look different, and do the reports that the clients look at and the KPIs they chase, did they change significantly?
If I can start this, I think a lot of things when we talk to clients about how to measure or the impact that customer engagement or customer experience should make, we believe that we should look at the business in 3 levers: activation, engagement, and monetization. If you think about it, it's quite logical, it's quite common sense. If you activate better, you're going to get more users. You're going to grow your new user base. And that if you can retain or engage, if you engage them better, they're going to stay with you longer. And if they stay with you longer, you're going to be able to sell more things and therefore monetize better. So a lot of the conversations that we've had is always about introducing these 3 levers of growth. And even in the results, when we look at the customer engagement report, clients who actually work with us and they go on omni-channel, they use more than like one channel, their impact on the business is actually quite significant. If I can just share some statistics for retail specifically, 58% of the users are actually more likely to purchase. And what they see, the companies that went on omni-channel, 73% actually increased the 90-day retention, which is a very, very significant uplift, because retention is a big, big problem, especially when consumers have so many choices these days. And the net result of it is that there's a 3.2 times increase in lifetime value. And that we are talking about dollars, we're talking about uplifts in revenue for the businesses. So it's really, really interesting. And we've always been advocating the use of cross-channel, omni-channel, so that you can actually reach customers at the right time. I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but it's easier said than done to understand the intent, to understand what people are thinking about, and kind of communicating and touching them at the right time with a relevant message.
Jayesh, I'm curious, as a consultant, what are you thinking is some of the bigger challenges for people? Is it what Chye just now mentions? Is it more the communication, the activation side? Is it more the technological equipment? Is it processes? As a kind of holistic consultant, what do you see?
Yeah, so there's a consulting word called boiling the ocean, right? So omnichannel, if you start with that, I think people try to do too much, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel it's even true personalization is very difficult to achieve, because the trade-offs that you make along the way is quite difficult. So what I advise people is to get at least a consistent multi-channel experience. I think if you aim for consistency over a period of time, you will build I would say a consistent experience for the consumer, which is still good before you try to do personalize. You cannot personalize every channel, because say, for example, if you're on a marketplace, what is the personalization you can do? You are bound by the tools that they provide. Similarly, you will always have constraints of marketing budget. So you will not be able to attract the segment that you want always to your website or app. So I would say breaking down omni-channel into very clear objectives, right? So one is maybe at an consumer experience level, at least have a journey map and make the experience consistent, and not try to over-invest in the tools, but at least have a SOP and consistency around how you manage customers. The second I feel on omni-channel is you need some tooling on the data side, right? Because you are going to collect first-party data, some multi-channel data, some transactional data, some offline data. So only because the reason why I say that is that you will never, there is so much consumer fragmentation, right? So if I give a personal example, the way I buy fruits is very different from the way I buy some other category, right? So how are you even going to get that right? So I would just say, define what you want to achieve through the tools for 2-3 large, either you go on a consumer segment level, or as you said, activation. What matters to you is that are you able to achieve your activation goals with the data that you have? If not, the data is not going to be ever sufficient. So you might as well use the data that the marketplaces provide or the third parties provide, right? So that's the second part of omnichannel, I feel. And the third is, which is more somewhat I said about D2C, is to find that that anchor, right, which connects the two. Like I think for some of the brands, they have found that connect. Like in the case of Disney, when you go to the Disney, any of their theme resorts, the fact that you can collect the photos on their app creates an experiential element. So I think that part requires a lot more time to build in terms of truly making it like a offline to online bridge, right? Because if you don't create that, then you will always have data insufficiency and you will have problems around that. So that's what I feel about omnichannel. It's a bit of a buzzword, but unless you break it down into the KPI you want to achieve, you will always get pulled in many different directions. And I would actually recommend, don't try for personalization first half, try for consistency.
I think that's a super important notion. It's like that there are so many options. There's so many sort of tons in the space really where you can engage the consumer. And I think being consistent in the basis and covering the basis is an important channel rather than trying to be good at everywhere and everything, right? That's just so much of everything. So prioritization, I guess, is important in the sense. We've been kind of really across the whole talk brushing shoulder with marketplaces. I'm curious if we can debunk that a little bit, because I think I've been since the beginning of pandemic, I've moved from Jakarta to our sort of second office in Czech Republic, and I've seen the pandemic kind of unfold remotely through my team in Asia and also here in Europe. And it's been interesting what kind of to observe the markets in especially retail, to be honest, how that changed and what's the perception. I think the marketplaces are something that's coming up here a lot, but I also see kind of couple of polarizing trends in there. So Adrian, I'm curious what you as Valiram think of marketplace. Actually, first question is Valiram becoming a marketplace with all of the brands you're representing? Because it would just lend itself to the idea, right?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. We've created our own marketplace of sorts, which I'll touch on. And then secondly is that we're only just starting to enter marketplaces now. And that's just through one brand. So obviously we have the marketplaces beating our doors down to come on and join because of the brands that we do represent. I've got a bit of a different view on marketplaces, to be quite honest, and I don't know if there's probably some marketplace people on this call, but my view is you got to understand what you want to get out of it, and then secondly from that you've got to understand also too your business margins, because at the end of the day, like that's key to it. You know what I mean? So. And so why I say those two more importantly is if you want a volume-based game where you're just looking for volume, or you're looking at a cash injection, or you're looking at stock that you may have an abundance of, like so retail, we obviously our stock, our inventory goes through various stages of its life cycle. It could be a good way to clear some stock. But if you're trying to look at managing margins and managing your inventory and trying to save here and trying to save there, you actually could dilute yourself a little bit. So I think it's really, once again, and I think back to the omnichannel discussion, it's understanding what you want to get out of it. And then it's also understanding your position. So for us, what we did last year at the start of the pandemic is that because we are a multi-brand retailer and we do cover, various brands of the fashion spectrum, as well as also to leisure, as well as also P&C, and obviously we have some higher end brands that we do represent. We actually, I guess, started our own, I wouldn't say it's a marketplace, but I would say it's a brand.com, our own brand.com, for us to be able to get multi-branded products out there. That's been very successful in the sense, because at the end of the day, we've kept the margins ourselves that we didn't generally have to pass on for the commissions. We weren't walled garden in the sense that, they've built the highway, now you got to pay the toll through advertising. So we've been able to run our own ad sets back to our own channel. We've been able to collect, obviously, that data at a first party perspective. We're able then to obviously do that data, what we do with it. So I think we've actually reinvested back into our own business rather than, I guess, someone else's, because the clear objective for us was to, look at, owning the IP. And I think that trumped it more so over, volume-based game, in the sense of where sort of marketplaces can go to. But in the sense that they do have a spot, and they do have a place. So if you look at, for instance, the Michael Kors brand, you can go into any marketplace at the moment and buy a Michael Kors handbag or a pair of Michael Kors shoes. Now, we can't guarantee the legitimacy of that because I'm seeing, an MK handbag out there for 20 ringgit, and I can guarantee you it's not a 20 ringgit handbag. So, there's also that trepidation to go and swim with the sharks as well, because at the end of the day, yeah, we are the official brand and we are coming from a brand perspective. But does the consumer know that? Does the consumer understand? Do they care? You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot to them, and as I said, but I think it's just a point by point, but it's just getting back to your objectives of why you need or why you want to enter a marketplace. As I said, and I think Jayesh just pointed to it before, is it's okay to have an imperfect solution. That's fine. It's okay to have a minimal viable product that you can get into market with and you can test and learn, So before running into marketplaces, depending on, what kind of business you're running at what scale, my suggestion is just dip your toe in the water yourself to understand what that looks like and what the brand.com and the e-com systems do look like, because the investments that you'll have to put in, you better line your IP pockets rather than others, because at the end of the day, you're paying for traffic. Yeah, you get traffic on the marketplaces, but I'll tell you, you need to invest into that traffic, and that traffic only comes at volume with an investment. So don't sort of kid yourself that you're going to get these influx of customers just organically coming to your store, because yeah, you will, but it's probably, I can guarantee you, it's not going to be to the scale that you hope and anticipated.
I think you just kind of opened or shine light at many doors right now we can go through. So what I'm curious is, I think this is not necessarily your case, because you alluded to some of the issues you might have with kind of the authenticity of the products that you find on the marketplaces, that not being probably even the actual brand, but being some type of knockoffs, which is its own issue. But I think the other one that I'm seeing that's pretty interesting, and if you kind of look at someone who has had a fair amount of experience with marketplaces like Amazon for a couple of years in US and other places, when there is a clear strategy of the marketplace itself to come up with the products that they actually see it as a sourcing platform for what's popular, and then manufacture it themselves probably at even cheaper rate, because they've got a better infrastructure for it than the vendors, right? So I think it's absolutely right, and Jayesh would love to kind of hear your comments on it. But I think from retailers' perspective, you need to look at what do you want to get out of it? Are you going to get rid of surplus quickly? Are you looking at traffic that is difficult to buy in the place where you are, and you are willing to trade it off for the fact that you actually don't get data, you don't get so much control of the customer experience, and don't get much relationship with them afterwards? Is it really that commercial? But I think the danger of having been kind of taken over those, I kind of considered from the Amazon example being super cannibalistic approach to its own, and it's kind of very I don't want to say dishonest, but I think it's a very double-edged sword, and the one side of that sword is much sharper than the other. So I think this is also, there's kind of a couple of polarizing forces really in the space that you get to see once you kind of start living it, right? Jayesh, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think any investment in a walled garden has its pros and cons, right? I mean, even on the advertising side, people invest a lot into Facebook and YouTube, and they are walled gardens in their own way. It's the same thing with marketplaces. But I think, as Adrian said, it's more a question of what is your brand philosophy and what's your, because I've also seen the other way around, right? It's a great time for very new brands to create demand for themselves through these marketplaces. We have seen, especially in markets like India, direct to consumer retail through marketplaces, like just category explosion, right? I mean, you would have in a certain category like say breakfast cereals, like almost like 10 brands getting created in the last 18 months because of digital explosion and the availability of marketplaces who basically take the headache out of your other problems, right? So yes, it is expensive, but it's also a way to build brands as well at this stage. So I think it depends on what phase of your life cycle you are, right? If you're a young brand, great. And I think the way I would use marketplaces is they're probably outlets. You may learn from those outlets and then imbibe some of that on your own. And kind of I think that's the way I would look at it. But there's no, when I speak to marketeers, they seem to have run out of options. Like, you have extracted juice from Facebook. Where else will you go for, if you have a sales target to hit, you have to go somewhere, and marketplaces come in. And then the question is, what do you, I think that's really a double-edged sword. But over a period of time, you can then find a mix.
Yeah, I agree with that. In the sense, I think we just made a good point around, breakfast cereals or FMCG, and I've seen the boom there with FMCG, because you're not going to go and order one box of breakfast cereal online and get it delivered, are you? But if you look at the basket, and I think, competing for basket space is a lot of what they talk about, then marketplaces do make sense. So obviously you're getting, you sort of touched on, Pavel, that you're getting, Pepsi. At the end of the day, they don't want you to buy one can of Pepsi. They want you to buy 24 cans of Pepsi. Then the recommendations are going to come thereafter to fill your basket size up with, potentially other goodies from PepsiCo or, other, brands that are in there. So as I said, it comes back to what you want to get out of it, and I think for us, as I said, you're right. You do squeeze a lot of juice out of your channels, and then you get to a point where you're like, right, okay, do we need to sacrifice margin over volume, or do we have an abundance of redline stock that we need to get rid of? Can we move it, on other channels? And I think that's when the business decisions kick in. So, as long as you're clear with that. Also, too, on the fact of other marketplaces, is that very rarely will you sell full ticket item products. And that's another consideration that you need to ensure that you're very aware of. That you will not go out and sell your full ticket items on a marketplace. Consumers are being trained to go for a bargain, to look for a deal. So if you're not prepared to do that, or you don't have the margins to do so, then marketplaces aren't your go. So that's also another thing to be, wary about.
I'm curious. Sorry, Chye, your turn.
Sorry, I think it's a great conversation that we're having here. I think fundamentally, if we go back to the basics, right, it's always about a balance. You can't do one thing and ignore the other. You've just got to kind of strike a balance and focus on what you want. And the other point I wanted to kind of share is focus on what you're best at. If you are good at bringing your brand story alive, if you are great at having a wide range of products, or the best colors, the best fashion, whatever it is that you're best at, focus on that. And then you leverage other strengths, whether it is technology platform, whether it's a marketplace that fits your needs at that point in time. I look at it from a technology standpoint. Very often when we talk to people, the way that they evaluate the technology, they go by features and they do a checklist. They've got this, they've got this. I actually want to caution against that, because it goes back, it's similar to how you do business. You kind of need to evaluate something that fulfills your needs at this point in time, but yet at the same time allows you to run or gives you the flexibility to change for whatever that's going to come. So again, to your point about whether it's marketplaces, doing your own website, I think you just need to be flexible and adaptable, because consumers are going to change. The situation is going to evolve, and we will have no control over that.
Yeah, just a side note on this marketplace piece. I feel you could also use the marketplace as a discovery point, right? And from my personal experience, I bought a built-in oven recently, and I actually went to Shopee, Lazada, Five, and then the guy who had the most consistent experience across these three marketplaces, I actually went to that shop and bought it from there, because we had to try, there were some features that we really wanted to look and buy. So having presence can result in offline, customer acquisition as well, right? So you need to also maybe, and that's where some of the other attribution models come in, because that purchase wouldn't have happened if that brand was not there on a marketplace, that retailer.
I think so. If you kind of look at it from like SEO perspective, right? It's also the discovery point, which could be interesting. But like you said, is just making any type of attribution even more complex, because how do you look at it in time, and as especially when you kind of don't really have those data points, like you don't know that I have visited you on 3 different marketplaces as a person. You know someone did, but you don't know it's me. And then I come to shop from you. You probably don't know that I've done research on all 3 like you just did. So this is really difficult, and I think there's this kind of the pros and cons of the platform relationship, especially when they kind of have the walled garden kind of mindset that you're trading access to traffic for something else typically. And I'm really curious what that's going to develop like in Asia in a few years, especially for the more established brands, because I think for marketplaces for generic products make perfect sense. That's you want everything in one place. That's the Amazon logic. I think that's just this is going to be here. But I'm curious with what Quinn showed in her presentation, how Nike made the decision to leave Amazon. And I think this is really the margin war there, really, more than anything else. And obviously brand experience control, which is part of their narrative. I am curious what it's going to look like for the more established brands. And I'm kind of more really looking towards Adrian's direction here, because you guys represent the brands that have a brand of their own, right? So this is a lot difficult to complete. Like it's not a handbag versus handbag. It's a Tory Burch versus Michael Kors, and I'm not even sure I'm getting the brands right now. I'm not a handbag guy, but this is gonna be super interesting, guys. I'm gonna being just cautious of time. We're running out towards 9 o'clock here, so I think we can kind of overdraft a little bit if you don't mind. I'd like to pick up a couple of questions from the Q&A that are coming up. So I'll take the first one for Chye. There's a question. I'm going to read it out. Is it sustainable to still deliver personalized content and real conversation to the customer when we meet them briefly and relationship is long distance, meaning online, and there's a significant amount of customers we serve to? So I think it's talking to personalization at scale probably is the yes. overarching theme here. So Chye,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think we just need to be mindful of the concept of personalization. I think in today's day and age, not many brands, not many products can actually do a one-to-one kind of customization. I mean, unless you're Rolls-Royce, I guess, you can create a product just for one customer. But for most other brands, when we talk about personalization, it's really looking at segmentation, understanding groups of similar behaviors or groups where they are exhibiting certain things that allow you to kind of classify them together. Now, is it humanly possible to do it on your own? I really don't think so. I came from marketing. It's impossible. So that's where I think technology comes in as an enabler. If you have a platform that allows you to kind of quite accurately segment and quite intelligently bucket them for you, and your role as a human being is then to kind of do what humans do best, create stories, bring that to life. How do you get an emotion? How do you get reaction from customers that you want? And if you focus your energies on that and let technology do what machines do best, segmentation, intelligently classify things for you, identify trends for you, then I would say it is sustainable. But again, it goes back to the definition of personalization. It's not one-to-one. It's just being relevant to a group of customers at a single point in time. You can't be blasting out promotion to like 1 million of your customers all at one time, all the time. There are times when that matters. If you're running a campaign, for example, you're having a big promotion. Yes, that makes sense. But if you're trying to get somebody to, hey, you've abandoned your cart, their items that you've left, you want to ask them to come back, you need to kind of do a more nuanced approach depending on what they've left behind in their cart. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think the underlying theme, obviously, there is a quality and consistent data, especially long term, right? Because you can't do personalization if I visit your website and my cookie is different every day, because your machines will think I'm a different person. So very simple that. Adrian, what's your take on that? Kind of a personalization at scale and kind of continuous delivery of that consistent experience. What does that look like for you guys? What are you looking at the Valiram?
Yeah, I think it's obviously important. We represent brands like Rolex. And then we can also represent brands like Godiva or TWG, Steve Madden. You know what I mean? So I think that's extremely important to understand. It's not easy to get right, and I think that, I think Chye sort of said it. That's where you need to look at those investments in technology. But also too, the other side of it as well is you need the people to be able to make sense of that. And I think that sort of people go into tools, resources, and platforms thinking that it's press of a button and all things happen. It doesn't work like that. You need the people to be able to set up the infrastructures. You need the people to be able to consistently evolve the tool, and then also too to make sense out of it. It's only as good as what you can put into it. So I think that, it's great. It's fantastic. It's needed. But also too, it's, if you're going to invest into a stack or you're going to invest into ad tech, martech, whatever it is, ensure that there's a significant, if not the same amount of investment into the people that actually can make sense out of it. I think, another example out of that is CRM platforms, the Salesforce. Fantastic platform, but man, you need to be a rocket scientist to get, to actually get the value out of it, or a dedicated focus to ensure you're maximizing the value. These personalization tools and resources are no different. So that would be extremely important, absolutely. But, there needs to be more than just, the checks and balances against the platform. It's, do I have the right people? And if I don't, how do I get the right people?
Yeah, and I think, Jayesh, this is something probably you as a consultant could probably confirm. So, right, is that the process is people as well as the technology. Like you can't have one without the other, and it's not just the technology that drives this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need the people to make sense and try out different things. Yeah, completely agree.
Guys, let me pick one last question, and I'm going to ask you if you can share a couple of maybe personal tips from your perspective that retailers should be focusing on. If you kind of pick 2 to 3 points, I'll give you a little bit of time to prepare for that. But let's grab the last question that I really like here, which is talking about offline to online attribution. I mean, look, attribution has been really, even for something as simple as e-commerce, attribution has been a really difficult topic, just because you don't have consistency of data. You are operating in walled garden environment where it's your Google, Facebook, they don't like to share data. The usual something that's been here for many years. This is not new. But what's new is the element of offline. How do you now? And look, I think this is something that's going to be the long-lasting effect of the pandemic. People get to a lot more used to researching online, doing their stuff online, and eventually going to offline, and whether that's to pick up or whether that's to finalize and execute the sale and pick up at store, whatever that looks like. So what's changed in your perspective, Adrian? Let's maybe start with you. What's changed in your perspective of how do you think about attribution, and are there new gaps or new challenges that came up in this?
Yeah, I think the gaps and challenges are still there with O2O attribution. I think that it's still the billion-dollar question. I don't think that we still have nailed it. I think we're getting closer to it. So at the end of the day, you're still reliant on the consumer. You know what I mean? And so that's the big one, right? And the consumer, so either the consumer to give that detail, the consumer to give that right detail, the sales associate or someone there to ensure that they've input the detail correctly. So I still think that there's, it's not where we would probably want it to be, but I think we've made some significant progress. I think O2O attribution is significantly important to sort of get very curious on and understand how that could work within your business. It's simply looking at, as I said, you maybe want to implement a loyalty program in the sense that where you get that data at, say, the point of sale system, and then that you can tie that back to, some of your marketing efforts that you've done, through targeted or curated lists from, let's say, Facebook. But then that doesn't overcome in the terms of your whole customer journey. So O2O attribution is about understanding the complete customer journey and where they come from. And I think obviously, you guys do it pretty well in that sense to show that. So that's where the real value is. And as I said, if you can then tie that back to obviously when you've seen the consumer journey, they come in, they do the purchase at the register, encourage them, incentivize them to actually give you that detail. You know what I mean? So that could be through loyalty, it could be through incent, it could be through gift with purchase, whatever it is, you know, because that's the only really way that you're going to get that holistic view. But once again, it's okay, you've got this data, great, but it's what to do with it now. So what, you know, so that's when I get back to the people side of it as well, is if you've got all of that, how do you make sense of that? And what's, you know, I guess what's those actionable insights that you can carry forward? But extremely important. I still think we're still a long way away, but I think we are making some significant steps, and technology is absolutely helping that. But we still have that human intervention that's needed, unfortunately.
100%. And I think there is one kind of a myth there that it all stops with the transaction. I actually think that's not right, because what I see with some of the even FMCG brands who never sold things directly for the last 70 years that we work with, they now are suddenly realizing that they can actually do that. Like you can put activation on packaging. You can. I've recently had an engagement with a company that builds printers, and obviously their business is the cartridges, not the printers itself. They are actually sold, under margin. So they are supporting the sale because they are going to make money from kind of the subscription model, ideally of the cartridges and the toners afterwards, right? And when they kind of look at what they are able to do, is they are able to attract 2% of people back to actually trace transactions after that, because they will simply go to any store and buy a cartridges. So there's such an opportunity there if they done the engagement right. But there has to be a benefit in that. So I think that needs to be like carefully constructed and designed customer journey that's part of that. Because if you are, you can't go to consumer and say, give me something, just give me data. The consumer has to have obviously clear benefits of that relationship, and I think in the more developed market also clear understanding of how the data is getting used. I think this the ethical aspect of data. It's probably a whole another podcast or webinar we're doing here, but I think that's this is a lot more. There's a lot more layers to the topic itself. So guys, we're so over time. I'm sorry, I've been enjoying this conversation so much, so I'm not really paying attention to time. And I think people on the call still have 90%, so a day as well. So let's just wrap up and go around the room and maybe start with Chye. What would be the kind of the 2 to 3 things you would want the retailers in 2021, kind of heading towards 2022, to take away from here? What would be your kind of advice for them?
I think one of the things 2021, 2022 is going to be fluid. I think as companies, as brands, especially in retail, need to have that whole ability to stay flexible and adaptable, and then using technology as an enabler to help you do that. So pick a partner, choose a platform that actually allows you to do what you need to do today, but yet allows you to kind of adapt for whatever change that's going to come.
Cool. Thank you, Jayesh. What are your thoughts?
So I think one thing is to start with the digital presence, right? And see what you can do to optimize. Second, the question around offline to online, right? There are many ways to experiment, right? So you could do geocoded vouchers, for example. You could do incremental testing, like you kind of do different creatives and see what happens, and creative plus product combinations. And the third I feel about retail, which couldn't talk about much, is this. I think that there are still a lot of data silos in a large retail organization, right? The CRM data, the POS data, they all don't really talk to each other, and they all have different vintages. So it's kind of difficult to get to a common understanding or a common pipe. So and that unless you solve it through simple use cases, you will. I think that's the other part which every retailer should start doing, right? To kind of start to stitch together that.
Thank you. And Adrian, what are your advices and wisdom to share?
Yeah, I think well, from a marketeer's perspective is make product, merch, and allocation your best friends moving forward. I think that's the advice that I can give. In the end of the day, it needs to be any sort of outbound communication needs to be a product and marketing led campaign. Get those guys extremely close, understand where your product is, understand your product life cycle and where it needs to be. And then you're able then to, I guess, pick your tactic, pick your marketplace, pick your pick your solution, pick your activation, whatever, when you understand that, because at the end of the day, it's got to make business sense. So generally, product, merch, allocation, those guys have the finger on the pulse. They understand the life cycle, they understand the margins, they understand what's hot, what's not. And as a marketeer, it's our role then to take all that information and ensure that we're communicating it to the right person. So that would be my advice, because that then allows you to do omnichannel, allows you to do marketplace, allows you to do all your customer journey map, and it allows you to do everything if you're clear on the outcome that you need to achieve.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been really exciting conversation. I think we really took it in a few different directions. If I kind of wrote just a few points which I when I write and listen and talk, I can't obviously read it after myself, so I'm not gonna even try to repeat it. But I think there's a couple of key messages here. Is that the D2C is a must, and brands need to start somewhere. That the omnichannel communication is something that where consistency matters more than anything else. So I think even if it's less channels and more consistency, that's important. And that the marketplaces are obviously a powerful part of the ecosystem at this point, but they are also a place where brands need a strategy and understanding what they are going to get out of it. So as this place gets much more, it's like, I feel like it's a very complicated multi-dimensional game of chess that we are playing right now with all of these walled gardens and moving within them. If I kind of try to put a client head on, so it's really, really interesting. Thank you again for joining us today. Thanks everyone in the audience, and great question. I'm sorry I didn't manage to answer and ask everything, but I think we kind of touched maybe outside of that sustainability, everything within the chat. We'll send a summary and a video. So if you didn't catch it all, you can definitely, we'll encourage you sharing that. And really, thank you. So such an interesting conversation and a great panel composite today. So thanks for your time. Sorry for running a little bit over, and have a good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And we'll see you soon in about a month on another edition.